My name is Angelica, and at 53, I never imagined my life would take such a scandalous turn. My husband Richard, and I've been married for 25 years. Our life together was comfortable, predictable, and if I'm honest, a bit dull. Richard, a 55-year-old accountant, was the epitome of stability. But recently, our relationship had been strained by his increasing work hours and my growing sense of loneliness. Our daughter, Emily, had moved out for college, leaving our home eerily quiet one evening after a particularly heated argument about Richard's absence from our anniversary dinner. He stormed, out muttering something about needing space. The door slammed with a finality that echoed through the empty rooms, leaving me alone with the silence of our house, amplifying my frustration and loneliness. I sat there, the remnants of our dinner growing cold, the candles flickering out one by one, as if mocking the warmth that once filled this room. My mind raced with thoughts, each more unsettling than the last. Was this the beginning of the end, or was there still something worth fighting for? The quiet was suffocating, pushing me to confront the reality of our situation. I wandered through the house, each room a gallery of memories now tinged with the bitterness of neglect. I paused at our bedroom door, the bed, neatly made untouched by the chaos of our lives. I knew I had to make a choice. Should I let this fester, allowing the silence to grow into an insurmountable barrier, or should I confront my feelings? Perhaps even confront Richard. When here turned the thought of facing him, of laying be the loneliness that had crept into our marriage was daunting, but the house felt too big, too empty. I decided I couldn't stay there, stewing in my anger. Grabbing my keys, I drove aimlessly the city, lights blurring past. My thoughts were a whirlwind of resentment and confusion. I ended up at a club, not the kind Richard would frequent, but one I remembered from my younger days. The club was pulsating with life, a stark contrast to the quiet I had left behind. The music was loud, the lights demand, the atmosphere charged with a youthful energy I hadn't felt in years. I ordered a drink at the bar, the bartender giving me a curious look, perhaps, wondering what a woman of my age was doing there alone. The drink was strong, the kind that could make you forget the weight of the world for a moment, or perhaps the weight of a marriage on the brink. As I sipped my drink, my eyes scanned the crowd, half expecting to see Richard, but knowing deep down he wouldn't be here. Instead, I found myself drawn to the dance floor, where bodies moved in a rhythm that seemed to beckon me. I hesitated, then set my drink down, the alcohol giving me a push of courage. The dance floor was a sea of movement, and for a moment, I was just another wave, lost in the music, lost in the moment. A young man with eyes that sparkled with mischief caught my gaze, head-inced closer, his movements fluid, inviting in. I felt a thrill, a dangerous edge to this encounter, something I hadn't felt in decades. We danced. Our bodies closed, the heat between us palpable. His hands found my waist, and I let myself be led. As I sipped my drink, trying to blend into the background, two young men approached. They were in their late 20s, with the kind of carefree confidence that comes with youth. Their names were Jake and Leo, both with an easy charm that made me feel seen in a way I hadn't for a long time. They started with small talk, asking about my night, my life. And before I knew it, I was laughing the tension of the argument with Richard melting away. Jake's eyes twinkled with mischief as he leaned in, his voice just loud enough over the music. "You seem like you're having the time of your life out here alone." His compliment was subtle, yet it sent a thrill through me, a reminder of a time when I was the center of attention. Leo, not to be outdone, chimed in with a playful grin. "You've got to tell us your secret. How do you keep that glow?" His words were like a warm embrace, pulling me deeper into their orbit. The conversation turned flirtatious, their compliments making me feel alive. I knew I should leave, find Richard, or at least go home, but the allure of feeling desired was too strong. One drink turned into several, and the boundary between harmless fun and something more dangerous blurred. Jake Shan brushed mine as he reached for his drink, sending a jolt through me. "You know, Angelica, you're not like anyone else here," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. The implication was clear. They're charged with an unspoken promise. Leo's gaze was intense, his eyes locked on mine as he said, "We could show you a good time, make you forget all about whatever brought you here tonight." His words were a velvet invitation, the kind that could lead to places I hadn't explored in years. I felt the pull, the temptation, to dive into this new exhilarating world. They offered, my heart raced. Not just from the alcohol, but from the thrill of being wanted, of being the object of desire. The reality of my situation hit me like a cold splash of water. The night deepened, and the club seemed to close in around us. Jake and Leo suggested moving to a quieter part off the club, a VIP area where the music was softer, the lights more intimate. My heart was racing, not just from the alcohol, but from the thrill of the forbidden in the dim light. Their hands found mine, their touch, gentle yet insistent. I knew this was wrong, that I was crossing a line I could never uncross. But the loneliness, the anger, the need to feel something other than the dull ache of my marriage pushed me forward. Their fingers intertwined with mine, leading me through the crowd, the heat of their bodies closed their whispers like silk against my skin. We reached the VIP section, a secluded space with plush velvet sofas and low tables. The music here was a distant echo, allowing for conversation, for whispers that could turn into something more. Jake poured me another drink, his eyes never leaving mine as he handed it over. To new experiences, he toasted, his voice a velvet caress. I took a sip, the alcohol burning a path down my throat, igniting a fire within me. Leo sat close, his thigh pressing against mine, his hand resting on my knee. "You're glowing, Angelica," he murmured, his breath warm on my ear. "Let us show you how much you deserve to feel." The air was thick with anticipation, the kind that precedes a storm. I felt their gazes like a physical touch, their intentions clear, their desire palpable. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, guilt, excitement, fear, and an intoxicating rush of power. Here I was, not the neglected wife, but the center of attention, desired, wanted. Jake's hand slid up my arm, his touch sending shivers through me. "You're beautiful, Angelica," he whispered, his lips brushing against my ear. "Let us make you forget everything." I looked into their eyes, seeing the promise of escape, of passion, of a night that could erase the loneliness of years. But as I felt Leo's hand move higher, my breath caught the reality of what I was about to do. The betrayal it represented. The moment was charged with an electric tension. Jake's lips met mine, and I felt a rush of adrenaline. Leo's hands were on my waist, pulling me closer. The world outside this small, secluded space ceased to exist. I was no longer Angelica, the wife, the mother, but a woman caught in armament of reckless abandon. We moved to a private room, the door closing behind us, sealing our fate. The act was passion, passate, intense, and filled with a raw desire that I hadn't experienced in years. It was over quickly, but the impact was profound as the heat of the moment began to dissipate. I lay there, the reality of what had just transpired slowly seeping into my consciousness. My heart was still pounding, not just from the physical exertion, but from the emotional whirlwind that had swept me away. I turned my head, catching Jake's eyes, which now held a mix of satisfaction and curiosity. Leo was already reaching for his clothes, his movements deliberate, as if he was trying to regain some semblance of normalcy. I felt a sudden chill, a stark contrast to the warmth that had enveloped us moments ago. The guilt began to creep in like a cold draft under the door. What had I done? The thrill of the forbidden was now overshadowed by the weight of my actions. Jake sat up, his hand brushing against mine, a gesture that once felt thrilling, now felt like a reminder of my betrayal. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice softer, less confident than before. I nodded, but my mind was racing. What would the aftermath of this night hold for me? Would I regret my actions? The thought of facing Richard, of looking into his eyes, knowing what I had done, made my stomach churn. Leo, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, spoke up. "We don't have to make this awkward. It was just a moment, right?" His attempt at reassurance felt hollow, the words echoing in the now quiet room. I stood up, gathering my clothes, feeling the weight of my choices. "Yes, just a moment," I echoed, but the words felt like a lie. This wasn't just a moment, the morning after was harsh. The reality of what I had done hit me like a cold wave. I left the club alone, my mind a tumult of guilt and confusion. I drove home. The silence of the car deafening. Richard was there, asleep on the couch, his face peaceful in sleep, unaware of the storm I had unleashed. I sat beside him, watching him, wondering how I could ever explain, or if I should even try. The weight of my betrayal was crushing, yet part of me felt strangely liberated. I knew our marriage would never be the same, but perhaps in this chaos, there was a chance for something new, something real. The sun was just beginning to peek through the curtains, casting a soft glow over Richard's face. His chest rose and fell with each breath, a rhythm so familiar, yet now so foreign to me. My heart ached with a mix of love and regret. How could I tell him about last night? The thought of confessing, of seeing the hurt in his eyes, was unbearable. But as I watched him, a part of me wondered if honesty might not be the key to unlocking something we had lost. Maybe, just maybe, this pain could lead to a deeper understanding. A renewal of vows not just spoken, but felt. I reached out, my hand hovering above his, the warmth of his skin almost palpable. Could I touch him now, after what I had done? The intimacy of the night before with Jake and Leo felt like a distant, forbidden dream, yet it was real, and it had happened. I withdrew my hand, the decision weighing on me. Should I wake him now, pour out my heart and hope for forgiveness? Or should I let him wake naturally, perhaps give myself time to gather my thoughts to find the right words? The house was silent, the kind of silence that follows a storm, heavy with the promise of change. Stood up, my legs shaky, and walked to the kitchen. The coffee machine hummed to life, a mundane sound in the midst of my turmoil as the aroma of coffee filled the air. I leaned against the counter, my mind racing. What would become of us? Would Richard? Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.